3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome everyone. Friar Tuck here. And have you ever wondered what a successful shelter might look like? You know, one of the great things about being somebody who's been chronically homeless all over the United States is I've got to explore a lot of different shelters. And what we're going to be talking about today is some of the programs in which I was able to participate in throughout the country, the good things that were about them, the bad things that were about them. Because if you're running a homeless shelter, you want to make it as efficient as possible, but you also want to make sure that it is something that draws people in, because the homeless crisis is about to get completely out of control. And so you're going to have plenty of people. So it's your job now to be able to offer them essential programs, because the federal government's probably going to run out of money. In the same way that they ran out of money for some of the defense contractors, and because I was watching an article about this, about the military-industrial complex, and we have actually cut way back in our military spending post-Cold War. It is old news of how much we really spend. We don't spend that much anymore as far as percentage of our GDP based upon inflation, all that other stuff. Okay, so with that being understood, you know, same thing is going to happen when the homeless crisis really kicks off, because the government is going to be getting less tax money. They can borrow less. Bonds are going through the roof. You know, economics are crazy. And so what this means is that there's going to be less money to be able to come down to you in the form of grants and other things. And so if you don't have the proper infrastructure set up, if you're not setting up something that is effective and that you can sit there and say, not only will our results prove it, but you can go back to your constituents and tell them how great you're doing, and then this is going to help us get more money to be able to service and deal with the homeless crisis. Because here's the thing, during the '08 collapse, homelessness got out of control. If you were working in the homeless community as an outreach worker, then you would definitely understand what I'm talking about. Homelessness, just there were quite a few stories about how homelessness had expanded in certain parts of the country because of what was going on with economics. Okay, and so let's say that we've got this coming, but much worse than the Great Depression. And the reason why it's much worse than the Great Depression isn't really what you would think. It's more like back then we were more dependent on the land and the farm, and so therefore we could grow our own food, so we wouldn't at least starve to death. But as we've become urbanized and more domesticated, we have actually put ourselves in a position to where we are highly vulnerable if anything happens to our food chain, and therefore that is going to create a whole bunch more craziness that is going to go around for all of this stuff. And so homelessness is going to really kick off. And if the money dwindles, you want to make sure that you are one of the programs that is getting the money from the federal government when you go and you do your grant writing. So what are some of the programs that actually worked? What did I like? What did I not like? Why did it work? And we're going to delve into it. So one of the first programs that I really liked that I experienced was when I was in San Francisco. For me, San Francisco is really good. Now, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, San Francisco is a magnet for homeless. It's not necessarily a magnet for homeless. It is a magnet for travelers, because it is the West Coast. There are trains that go through that area. Everybody wants to stop in. People hitchhike and they walk up and down the Pacific Crest Trail, which goes right through San Francisco and the Bay Area. You know, you've got all of that stuff that's going on around there, which allows for a transient community, and some of those transient communities are bringing stuff in. Now the thing is, in the folklore about San Francisco, at least when I was there, was that you would come on vacation and leave on probation. And it used to be that bad, but it got to a point where criminals would cross over into San Francisco County because they knew before they could even finish tightening the handcuffs on them, because of how overrun the system was, that they would actually give them a court date and release them on OR, which is own recognizance, for those of you who do not know. And so the police are so overwhelmed and they can't really put anybody anywhere anyway. So they're very picky on the crimes in which they deal with. And they're trying to use the jails for the really heinous crimes, but then that means you have more of a criminal element. And so therefore you get stuck there, even if your intent was just to be there for a short period of time. I was on the Ninth Circuit Court where, and smoking a spliff when I first got into town, and they had come up to shoo a girl off of the window ledge, and they saw me, and the cop ends up finding my marijuana, finds my weed, and he says, well, this is just Mexican dirt weed. And I'm like, yeah. Back then, I thought that was good stuff. No, no, I learned real quick. He's like, this ain't even worth the paperwork. This isn't worth anything to just, he took it from me and said, get out of here. And I went through my day, and I learned a lot about San Francisco, and it became one of my favorite places to be. But if you are homeless in San Francisco, okay, they have what's called a general assistance system, which they used to, okay, and this is under Mayor Gavin Newsom. For those of you who love to hate Gavin Newsom, I was there when Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco. And just to tell you a little bit about Gavin Newsom, he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and also had to come out that he was an alcoholic. The whole city forgave him after he went through a drug rehab, and then he went back to his same old stuff. So he's just like Hunter Biden when it comes to the type of leader he is. So just so you want to know who Gavin Newsom really is, I was there when he was mayor, and the mayor before him got caught smoking crack and with prostitutes. Joe Brown. Oh boy. Yeah, that'll date me. Okay, if you're from that area, or when that happened, you'll know about how old I was and what time period this was. Okay, and they would have you go in and get general assistance, and they would give you food stamps right there on the spot. With the food stamps, they would give you a hot meals program, a hot meals card, which means you could go to any restaurant, sit down in the restaurant, and spend your food stamps there. And honestly, it's a good thing, because it's when you go to a grocery store, it's going to be like $7-8 for a sandwich that doesn't even come with any like mayonnaise or mustard or pickles or anything. It's lettuce that has been nasty, and tomatoes that are kind of soggy, and you get meat, and you're paying $6, $7, $8 for something like that. Or you could go to Carl's Jr., which is right there in Union Square, and you could get, let's say, a double burger, a Western burger. Okay, that was one of the things I used to go there and get, and I could get a milkshake and whatever. And so now, not only was I getting a much better quality meal, and it was costing me about the same, but it made the overall experience much easier, because it would be nice if in certain areas, if I needed to, I've got food stamps, and I would like to stop in and get a pizza because Sam and I are, traveling in one form or fashion, okay? And it makes it really nice. But so they had that program there. That is something that, if you are an advocate and working within the homeless programs, not only will this help the hospitality industry, because it will help prop them up and give them clientele that they otherwise wouldn't have. And not only that, it gives the homeless a much better experience, okay? The shelters really didn't feed because of that program, okay? There was no need for it. You would go to St. Anthony's, which was the Catholic Church, and all they did was feed. They fed 3 times a day if you wanted a meal. And so if you ran out of food stamps, you go to St. Anthony's, okay? And that's what you do. Or you go up on the hill to Mama San, okay? But that's a whole nother story. Not only would they give you food stamps when you walked in, but you would get a monthly stipend of $15 every on the 1st and 15th of the month. And that $15 was used so that you could go buy your roll of your own tobacco. So if you were a smoker, you could continue smoking and do it cheap if you spent your money right. It was enough to buy like 3 pouches of tobacco with an extra pack of papers, and that's really all you had money for with that $15. Or you could go buy toiletries or whatever it is that you needed cash for, because panhandling was really hard in San Francisco. That's one of the places why I never did panhandling. Okay, there was other ways to make money in San Francisco outside of panhandling. But so then you would get what is called a 90-day bed. So they would give you a 90-day bed, and you had to fit in one of 3 categories. Either you were working, okay, or which means that you were able to go back to work, and so therefore you went in a job program. You had to turn in so many searches every week to your GA office. You had a worker that kept on top of you with everything, okay? And there was a way to circumvent the system, because the way that the economy worked in San Francisco is you couldn't get a job unless you had a job. So if you wanted to be able to work your way up into, let's say, the IT field, which is what I was doing, you start off with a job telemarketing, and then you start off with a job doing something else, and then you start off with another job, and then eventually you get the IT job. Because the thing is in San Francisco, you can't get a job without having a job. Okay, so it's much harder to go get a job unless you go get something that is such low-hanging fruit that they will hire anybody, any warm body that walks through the door, and then you use that as a platform. And that's what you're supposed to do there. But a lot of people don't understand that, and it was explained to me. And so a lot of people could circumvent that by saying, I can't find a job, because they didn't have a job and they didn't go for the low-hanging fruit. They went for the things that they were qualified for, instead of having a job, or instead of having low-hanging fruit and working their way up. And yeah, you go through 10 jobs in a year to get to your final job, but that's kind of what you had to do if you wanted to move up in San Francisco. It's kind of weird. But anyways, not only you would get the 90-day bed, okay, and so you would get the work program. If you were in college, you had to work part-time. You were not allowed to, even if you were in school part-time or full-time, you still had to work a minimum of 20 hours a week in order to be able to get their services. Okay, so it's not like you got to sit there and be on it for free. Okay, it's not like you got to game the system. And then they had the other program, which is if you're applying for disability. Now, this is what kind of opens it up, and this is where the eyesore is in San Francisco, is there are those that go on that program for disability, and if you go on that, then they immediately house you, put you in an SRO. But the thing is, the only way you can get into that disability program is you have to get a referral from your doctor. And that was the gatekeeper for it. I actually was put in that program because my doctor thought that, she was the one that suggested it, because I was against it. But I'm like, it'll put me in an SRO, put me in a place. And quite frankly, I at that time, I got a better night's sleep out on a street corner than I did in one of those SROs, because it's San Francisco. It's old buildings, and it's very loud, and you can hear everything in everybody's apartment. It's just nuts. Okay, but that's the shelter program that they had. Now here's where the flaw came in. Now, because it was like, okay, well, you can only make $465. I made $467. So therefore, all of the benefits that I got, minus the food stamps, was withdrawn from me. So I immediately lost my 90-day bed and all the benefits that came from that, including the $15 every 2 weeks. And I was pretty much, because I made $2 more, I was therefore withdrawn from the program and considered it a success. We got another person off the street, so we closed another program, okay? And so what I ended up having to do was I went to a private shelter, because I was looking around, and there in San Francisco, GA runs everything. There's only like 1 or 2 private shelters, and I went to this shelter called Next Door. And Next Door saved my butt. They have a 30-day wait-in, so you're kind of in this pool for 30 to 90 days while they wait for a bed upstairs. And you're up there, and you have to save money, and you have to give them money to hold off for you, and so on and so forth. And because it's a private shelter, they do require that you do donate some of your income, which I understood, because I made sure that these guys did not get any government funding. They're like, yeah, no, we don't get it. We are privately owned. That's why we can do what we do. And so because I was, I had a job and everything like that, they were able to let me in. And by the time I got upstairs, which was like 3 weeks later, another 2 weeks after that, I was put in a place. I was renting a studio with two other people for $600 a month. Okay, so it was pretty tight, and I had to go and ask for more hours so that I could live, and so on and so forth. But that is a shelter. Out of all of the shelters that I've seen that work, that's what works. Now, I have seen over here in Covington and a lot of other places, they do have some programs that look very promising, such as their jobs program. But the thing is, they won't recognize the digital economy. When McDonald's will no longer hire, when you can no longer go get those low skill, no skill jobs because it's been automated, or it's in such low demand right at that point for various reasons, because of economics, though you can't go get a job. And so not recognizing the digital economy and its role, and to be able to give somebody an opportunity and to set up, because I mean, they set up things like, okay, you got 30 days to find a job, so on and so forth. But the thing is, they want you to be dependent on the system. They don't want to give you your independence. The digital economy will give you your independence, and the more independent you become, the less power they have. And so that's a big thing that I see that's happening, and it's getting really bad within within the homeless services that are being offered to the homeless community. Okay, and this is, if they were to recognize the digital program, that is great. Now, another place that I was at that actually was good was in Dallas, which was one of the first places I ever went homeless. I was like 21 years. I was 21 years old because I was able to buy a beer. I just turned 21. Um, and I had been couch surfing for a while, and I finally just decided, time to move on. And so I took the last little bit of money and my car, and I went down to Dallas. And I ended up getting into what's called the Dallas Life Foundation. Now, I did not know that there was a second shelter. I did not know that that second shelter was a scary nightmare. But I talked to people from that other shelter, and they're like, no, 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 it's so much safer here. You stay here, don't go there. Okay, you're not in that crowd, and you don't want to be. Yeah, and I would have people tell me that. So what they had was, they had two programs. They had a rehab program, and they had a donor that would give you like $20 a week for each of the program recipients, and then you could go down to the local commissary and buy food out there. Or, because like, for if you're in the rehab program, for the first 30 days or 90 days, you're not even allowed outside of the building. You're stuck in that building for 30 days minimum. And then from that point on, then they start letting you go out into the community. And I was forced into that, and I'll talk about that another day. And I thought it was stupid, but times have changed. That wouldn't happen today, what happened to me, being forced into the recovery program. But you know what? It ended up working out for the best, because once I got to a different point, because at that point in time, they convinced me that I'd had panic attacks, which that has been overturned. I do not have panic attacks, something completely different. Okay, and you hear me talk about it. All right, but back then they convinced me that was my original diagnosis. Okay, and so because I was MHMR, which is mental health, mental recovery, they sent me into like a halfway house, where it was a house, it was paid for, got to eat all the food. It was kind of like being in the hospital, but being in a house. It was kind of awesome. I really liked it, because you could eat, and you always ate really well. But the thing was, is they made me choose between my job and their program. And because I chose my job, because I wanted to get on my feet and I was making the right choice, they're like, no. And so I had to leave that program. But the other program that they had was the jobs program, which if I had not have gone into the MHMR program, I would have gone into the jobs program, which is what I wanted to do. But I found out, hey, I can go to a halfway house, get out of the shelter. I'm taking that route. I'm going to take advantage of it. And I never fault anybody for taking advantage of the system, as long as, within reason. Okay. I mean, if you've got that checkbox, you might as well use it. I mean, it sucks being on the other end of it, but whatever. It sucks for everybody, because I don't like it, and I know you don't like it. And nobody likes it when it's done to them, but if it's going to offer you an advantage, only a fool would turn that down. Okay, it's the system that allows it to be open, and us being complacent that allows it to happen. Okay, so with the job program, they already had a network out in the community, and in that community, if when they would have new guys come in, they'd already send them out for the jobs, and they'd already have people. Even when I owned my janitorial business, which I owned it in Dallas, or we relocated from Oregon to Dallas, we were using the Dallas Life Foundation because I knew they had a jobs program. So anybody that was good to work, so on and so forth, bring them to work. But they're kind of a little nuts. I was trying to be friendly with a guy. I think he took what I was saying the wrong way, which happens. But no, I didn't really think of, the way he was interpreting it. But, I wasn't really, again, I was just trying to make friends and trying to, get an employee instead. The guy was just a weirdo. Well, I don't know if he's a weirdo because, anyways, I'm not going to even go into it. Maybe one day I will. But you make mistakes when you're in business. And again, I think it was misunderstanding. Okay, and but that jobs program was really, really good. Those are things that you can offer for the homeless that are like, if you want to create a shelter system, if you want to be able to get people up and on their feet, you have to be able to push them in the right direction. A lot of people call on San Francisco, but most of the people that are there in San Francisco that don't, there's a small percentage of them that don't take advantage of the shelter system because they're never going to comply, and they just figure it's much easier to be there than it is to be anywhere else. And so therefore it gives San Francisco a bad name. But the thing is, San Francisco was doing a lot more than LA ever did. LA is, here's $200 a month, an SRO for 14 days. Both of these are once in a lifetime benefits, and then you get food stamps for as long as you can get food stamps according to the federal programs. And have fun. We're going to put you in Skid Row. That's LA, and that really, really sucked. And I was there, and every time you look like you're going to get up on your feet, the way that the whole system is rigged, because you can't make money legitimately out there. And so if you've got to go and do some things to put food in your belly and give yourself a shower because you ain't had one in 45 days, you'd be amazed what you're willing to do when you reach certain limits. And LA was that lesson for me. That's really what makes LA so tough, is that's all they do. And then they say that they're helping the homeless, which they're really not. They just kind of allow them to exist without complaining too much, because there's nothing they can do because of how big it's gotten. Okay, because it attracts a lot of people for fame and fortune and all kinds of things, and those people, most of them don't make it, and they end up out there on the streets, and they end up out there for a long time. Some of our most famous actors were homeless before they ever made it. So that's part of LA and the culture. But a lot of them that don't make it, the grind gets to them, and a small percentage of them make it off the streets. And so therefore it keeps compounding, because people want to go to Hollywood and be movie stars and be, big businessmen and all that other stuff that LA brings, just like Miami. And so therefore you're going to see the homeless population grow big. But is it because California sucks at homelessness? Well, no, LA sucks at homelessness. San Francisco is doing a decent job, or they were when I was there. And I mean, if you really wanted to get up on your feet, you had every opportunity for those that really wanted it. And a lot of people took advantage of it because it was looked at as temporary. People didn't feel bad about being homeless. Okay, so if you want to know how to help the channel and stuff like that, you've watched this the whole way through. Thank you very much. I'm so proud of you. Not in a condescending way, kind of like I want to give you a pat on the back and give you a great big hug and say, hey, you know what? I'm glad I was entertaining for that long, because sometimes I put myself to sleep, but it is what it is. All right, if you want to know how to help the channel, there's two ways. You can come over and become a member of Patreon. Okay, you'll get the nightly live streams. That'll be for any paid member. There's different tiers. Check it out. The other way that you can help this channel out, if you want to, help me grow and kind of get myself off of the streets, is here on YouTube. I have a tier now that is $9.99, and it's for early access to these podcasts. So I upload them on Monday. Sometimes I upload them earlier, but they are generally uploaded by Monday, and then they are released on Thursday. So if you want to be able to get to them a few days early, this is for $9.99. You'll get access to it early. Plus you'll get other member perks as things grow. I will be able to offer other things to really hone in the value. But I think that early access to this, and just it's more of a thank you to the channel than, because I mean most people are okay waiting. But anyways, that's how you can help the channel, other than like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next podcast. Thanks for watching Army of Tuck.